Creeds and confessions tell us that we are not the most important thing, that the faith is much bigger than us. It existed before we arrived. It will exist after we've gone. We are only significant as Christians because we are the part of some larger, significant historical whole.
When we think about how this affects the church, I know that when I was in my faith crisis, and I grew up in a tradition where I wasn't really taught things like hermeneutics, systematic theology. I knew almost no church history. I knew very little, but I did know the Bible because I read the Bible. I was not really taught to interpret it properly, but I knew what it said. And that really got me through a lot. I really loved the Bible, but I really didn't know a lot about creeds. And so when I was in my crisis and trying to find my stability underneath me, and I discovered, oh, there's all these creeds going back even into, of course, the famous 1 Corinthians 15, 3-5 creed that Paul records for us that some scholars even put to within 18 months to anywhere between that and 5-7 years of Jesus' death and resurrection. I mean, we have these creeds in our church history. And that was one of the things that really helped stabilize me, because when I was talking to my progressive Christian friends, it's like, what does it matter? It's just your interpretation of the Bible. The Bible wasn't really on the table to have that conversation. So when you can appeal to some of these creeds, I think that can be a really helpful thing for people, which is why I'm really glad you've I suppose, updated this book. This is an older book that you've updated and expanded, I understand, called Crisis of Confidence: Reclaiming the Historic Faith in a Culture Consumed with Individualism and Identity. Why did you decide to, is this an update, right, of your older work? Why did you decide to do that now? We're taking another quick break here to let you know about another one of our sponsors, and that is 7 Weeks Coffee. I love 7 Weeks Coffee for so many reasons, but one of those reasons is because they are unapologetically pro-life. I have been passionate about the pro-life cause since I was a very, very young girl. It's been something that I've tried to help promote on the podcast with pro-life resources and pro-life apologetics. And this is another reason that I'm so proud to partner with 7 Weeks Coffee. But that's just one of the reasons that I love them so much. I also love them because I'm a bit of a coffee snob. I used to order my beans from an artisan roaster in Oregon, and I do not order from them anymore. I order from 7 Weeks because I honestly believe their quality is just that much better. Their beans are shade grown. They are direct trade, which is better than fair trade. In fact, they pay their farmers 300% more than the standards require for fair trade. They are pesticide-free, mold-free. It is just so good. And I love the imagery too. That 7 Weeks name comes from the idea that when a baby is 7 weeks old, not only can you detect a heartbeat, but it's the size of a coffee bean. So you can know that when you order from 7 Weeks Coffee, that part of the proceeds are going to these wonderful pro-life causes. So go to 7weekscoffee.com, use my code Alisa for 10% off. Again, that's 7weekscoffee.com, use my code Alisa.
Yeah, well, I wrote the original. It was about 12 years ago, and it was an attempt to persuade my evangelical friends who belong to churches where perhaps they maybe have very short statements of faith in their church, 5, 10 points, or maybe have no written statement of faith at all. It was an attempt to persuade them that having good, elaborate statements of faith of the kind we find, say, in the Westminster Confession that Presbyterians like myself agree with and subscribe to, was a good way of protecting all they valued about the Christian faith. In the decade or so since then, I think that creeds have become, and confessions become even more important, partly because of expressive individualism. And when you think about it, I don't know, Alisa, if you go to a church where they recite the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed on a Sunday. We do that at my church probably once a month or something like this. When you think about what do you do when you recite a creed, you automatically identify yourself with the church. You identify yourself with millions of Christians on that Lord's Day across the face of the planet, reciting the same words, professing publicly the same faith, and with Christians going back through the centuries who've used the same words. And when you think about that, that shapes the imagination. And if the battle against something like expressive individualism is in part a battle for the imagination. Expressive individualism doesn't come about because people read books and are persuaded by arguments. It's the air we breathe. It's the way our minds have shaped by everything we imbibe from our culture. Creeds and confessions tell us that we are not the most important thing,
Mm.
that the faith is much bigger than us. It existed before we arrived. It will exist after we've gone. We are only significant as Christians because we are the part of some larger, significant historical whole. So that's one advantage of creeds and confessions. The other one is going back to sort of the answer to the last question. We're in an era now where we need to grasp the faith as a whole. We need to realize that what you think about creation will affect what you think about sexual morality. What you think about marriage is grounded in how you think about the image of God. And what creeds do is they connect all the different doctrines for you. They present them in a concise form. And if you read, let's say, the Westminster Confession from beginning to end, you don't just get great doctrine. You see how doctrine fits together as a whole. And that, I think, is gives us a much stronger theology for addressing challenges from our culture. So, for example, use an example from nearly 10 years ago now, gay marriage. What should a Christian's attitude to gay marriage be? Well, the Westminster Confession doesn't have a statement on gay marriage. Nobody was thinking about that in
Right.
1647. But it has a great statement on marriage that rests upon other doctrines that the confession articulates, and allows us, therefore, to have a solid theological base rooted in the Word of God by which to identify what marriage is and all other fake pretenders to the title.
Yeah.
So, confessions, I think, incredibly useful. As the world gets more complicated, we need that theological structure in our minds so we can handle whatever challenges come our way.
That's really good.